Hi, I'm Ron from Above and Beyond Creative Sewing, and I wanted to talk to you today about needles. We get a lot of questions about needles. What size should I use? What thread should I use? What do the needle sizes all mean? So I'm going to try to clear that up a little bit for you. So as you can see, there's a lot of different needles available, and we carry Schmetz, but we carry other brands also. And there's different numbers on the needles. So people will come in and say to me, I want a 9014. There's no such thing as a 9014. A 90 needle is a metric number, and a 14 needle is a Singer number. So on the package they write 90/14. They really mean the same thing. So don't worry about that. The next thing that people want to know are the points. There's all different kind of points on the needles. So this is a sample needle. Obviously it's not a real needle. It's just to kind of explain the different types and parts of the needle. This is the point of the needle. This is the shank of the needle, is the blade of the needle, and this is the shank of the needle. So there's a number on these needles. It's a 705H. That's a home needle. So that tells us the size here, and the distance between the top of the eye and the top of the needle here. You don't need to know any of that. You just need to know that your machine takes a home needle. But those numbers all do mean things. After it says 705H, there's some numbers, and those generally refer to the tip. Needles have a lot of different tips. For instance, if I was going through leather, I don't want a point because skin doesn't pop too well with a point. Leather is a skin. You want a blade, and it actually will cut through, and that allows it to open that hole nicely. If I'm working on knit fabrics, I want a ball point. I want a rounded tip. I want a rounded tip because if I break that elastic fiber, when I stretch on the fabric, it's going to make a bigger hole, and you'll see it. So the round tip will not break the fiber. It'll find its way through. A universal tip is as you would expect. It fits most things. You can use it for just about everything. But a lot of times the needle will have a sharper point, like let's say a Microtex needle or a denim needle. That's for a dense fabric like denim or maybe canvas, something that's very densely woven, and the needle has a hard time getting through. So by sharpening the point, it's able to pick through the fibers. A lot of times people will say to me, oh, I'm doing denim, so I want to use the biggest needle you can have. Well, that doesn't really make sense because if you have a heavy piece of wood and a big fat nail, it's very hard to push it through. If you have a fine nail, it'll go in nicely. So we want a small needle that'll go through. What you really want is a denim needle with a sharper point so that it can get through that fabric. So it's not really the size of the needle for the fabric, it's going to be more the point of the needle for the fabric. The thing that you want to know the size of the needle for is when you work with thread. There's a long groove here in the front of the needle, and when the needle goes in the fabric, goes down into the fabric, and my hand is the fabric, the thread actually folds up into that groove. And when the needle comes out of the fabric, and I don't have another hand, but as the needle comes up, the fabric folds back out. So that groove has a purpose. Then the eye of the needle there also is the same size as the groove. And when the thread is in there, it has to be able to slide back and forth. So by having a different size needle, it'll change the size of the groove and the size of the eye. When you make a stitch, it actually goes back and forth. It goes around the bobbin case. So it makes a big loop, and then it makes a tiny stitch like that. So it winds up doing like a seesaw action. And it'll go through that eye of the needle about 80 times for every one stitch. That creates a lot of friction and heat. So by having a bigger needle and a bigger groove with a bigger eye, it'll allow that thread to go through nicely and not create heat so that it doesn't break. So you want to size your needle based on your thread, not on your fabric. So I have a little demonstration for that. If you want to know if your needle is the right size for the thread you're using, so I hope you can see this. I picked a color that should work against my shirt. So this is a regular smaller needle and a regular piece of thread, and I'm going to spin it. And as it slows down, you'll notice that it kind of catches. It doesn't really lower to my thumb. Kind of just staying up there. This needle is too small for this thread. The eye of the needle is too small. Even though it fits in there, and even though you can get it to pull through, it doesn't pull through smoothly. It's going to create a lot of friction, and that thread will break. This is a top stitch needle, and if I spin the top stitch needle, it has a much bigger eye, and when it slows down, you see how it kind of just drops nicely to my finger? It didn't jerk on the way down. It didn't hang. Sometimes they hang just a little bit. So if it's coming down and it sticks a little bit, it's still too small. Go one size bigger. That's how you'll know if you have the right size needle for the thread you're using. And if you want to know what size needle you have, we have these nifty little booklets. It's a pocket guide from Schmetz. And these are $4.95, but as a bonus for watching this video, if you come in our store, you have to physically come in and ask for one of these. We will give you one. It explains what I explained about the needle in the centerfold. It shows you every type of needle that Schmetz makes, but then it has this other little thing here. This is a chart that you can tell what type of needle you have. If you look at these needles, this is a top stitch package, and you can see that there's two bands of color. The top band is green or like a teal, and the bottom band is purple. So if I look here, it tells me that the top band was that green color. It says it's a top stitch needle, and the other one was purple. It tells me it's a top stitch 100. So without having to have magic, you can just look at those colors and know what needle you have in your hand without, even if you don't have the package anymore. So that's a free gift from us to you if you just stop in the store and ask for it. This is Ron from Above and Beyond Creative Sewing saying thank you very much for watching.